Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What is the most insane, evil, funny, dumb way a spouse has tried to screw the other? I worked at a computer repair store as a sales technician. Had a guy come in with a desktop that he wanted Windows reinstalled. I asked him if he wanted me to back up all of his data first and he told me that he had everything he wanted and just did a wipe. I put it in the queue and he paid and left. I started it about an hour later since an XP install was only about 45 minutes off the network. I didn't bother doing anything else except deleting the original partition and making a new one and installing Windows. About an hour after that his wife came running in asking if we had a computer with Smith as the last name. I told her I did and she showed me her it and said that her husband brought it in to try and destroy all the proof of him cheating and stealing money from their business. When she asked if I had wiped everything yet, I told her I just did a Windows install and didn't actually really wipe anything. I called her husband and told him the situation. I told him his wife was here to get the computer. He asked me if I reinstalled Windows like we spoke about and I told him I had. He told me I don't give a crap. Give her the computer. There isn't anything left on it anyway. I said alright and hung up. I told her that he said I could give it to her and then explained to her how reinstalling Windows doesn't magically delete everything and explained to her how I could recover all of her files in a couple of hours. I ended up staying late that night and she bought me pizza and Mountain Dew. I ended up recovering every file he tried to have me destroy and made multiple copies for her. She ended up calling him from the store and reading off some of the messages he had tried to delete from his emails. I was worried that he might try to come back in and confront me, but nothing else ever came of it. Very cute of her to bring you pizza and Mountain Dew. Husband and wife divorce after husband finds out wife is sending obscene texts to other guys. He goes into a deep depression. They didn't have much. Lots of debt and 2 dogs. One was a dog he had had since before the marriage. He got her. The other dog was only about 3 years old and was bought to keep the older, 7-year-old dog company while they worked. Wife demanded that since he got his dog that she got the other. He is depressed and just wants to move on, so he agrees. She gets the dog and has it put down the next day. She didn't want the dog. She just wanted to hurt him. This one hits close to home because it happened between my parents. We had a family friend who was a lawyer and my parents agreed that he would be the lawyer for both of them as a mediator. So, as the assets were being divided, my dad got absolutely slammed. She was going to get the house, cars, half his retirement, and an insane amount of alimony, to the tune of like $2,500 a month for the rest of her life. My dad has a good job as a municipal employee, but that was probably 70%ish of his paycheck. Turns out that my mom and the family friend actually conspired to rip my dad off and make it seem like that's what a divorce settlement looks like. And she was going to kick back more money under the table after the dust had settled. Dad just didn't know how these things worked. So, after some convincing, he finally went out and got his own lawyer. He got a very fair divorce settlement after that. Mom still to this day can't understand why we don't talk to her much. That other attorney could be disbarred for that. Personal experience. Unbeknownst to me, my ex was having an affair. I worked a lot of hours, so I didn't pick up on it. We had always dreamed of buying a house on a huge local lake to retire in. We literally started shopping for houses and even to raid a dozen or so. We found 2 well within our budget, but would need to sell our house first. My wife convinced me to take out a couple loans in my name and get a couple credit cards, again in my name. Most of the bills were in hers, and the mortgage was in hers, so I did. I spent about $25k in CCN loans to fully update our house and get it ready for market. As soon as the work was done, she told me she was leaving me and wanted to sell the house. Dang, did she get the house or is it still ongoing? Most malicious thing I know of personally involved a co-worker of mine. He was sleeping with a married woman, and ultimately the husband found out she was having an affair. Really ugly divorce ensues, during which they fought over a lot of assets, but the real point of contention was their dog, lovely GSD named Orion. Eventually, husband gets custody of the dog, and in under a month, has the dog put down, just to hurt her back for the affair. When I posted this, I thought this situation was a rarity, and have shock and awe value from the cruelty at work. After reading the responses in this thread, not only am I saddened by how many pets get caught in the crossfire, but I am genuinely shocked by the lengths some people will go for petty vengeance. There must be rules on vets putting down healthy pets. My uncle's ex tried to work it in that she would get half of whatever my grandmother would leave him when she passes. Joke's on her. My grandmother is passing over her kids, not maliciously. My uncle is very well off and so is my mom, and leaving everything to my brother and me. Oh, also tried to get sole custody of both of their children, who are in their 20s. I'm not a lawyer, but I work as a legal assistant for a family lawyer. The ex-husband was getting remarried. 1. His ex-wife sent him and his new fiancée a dozen black roses before their wedding. 2. His ex-wife then had a plane fly across during their wedding, dragging a sign that read, "Name of ex-husband, likes it up the butt." You can't make this stuff up. Sad part is, she was not well and had been in and out of psych wards over the years. I hope she's getting the help she needs now. Not a divorce lawyer but worked for one back in the 90s. A woman and her kids went on vacation and came back home to find that the soon-to-be ex-husband had broken into their house with his attorney, thrown a party, and microwaved the kid's kitten. Husband's attorney got disbarred I believe, but that was about it. And microwaved the kid's kitten. What the actual frick is wrong with people? I'm going to school to be a vet assistant. My teacher is a veterinarian. She told us on Monday she's had clients bring their animals in to be euthanized so their spouse couldn't have them. SMDH. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but my prior employer once was served with an obviously forged garnishment order from an employee's ex-wife, directing garnishment of his wages in an amount that far exceeded his actual wages. We reported it to the police department. Employer here who has had to garnish wages from time to time. I don't know how it is there, but here, when there's any sort of garnishment, we pay the money to a state county, and they send the money to the person or company. The ex wouldn't have gotten it anyway. I was quite rightly reminded that posting about an active file, even anonymously and on generic terms, is bad practice, so I removed that. I had one client who was controlling their spouse by keeping them addicted to him. I fired them. My boss had a client who, well after we fired them, set themselves and their child on fire rather than give up custody. Anyone asking if the above was a specific case, I am ethically prohibited from confirming or denying, but this is sadly not a very unique event. There are lots of reported and unreported instances. None of these are that funny. I apologize. So here's my funny story. On the stand, my client and the other lawyer's client each spent about an hour saying I'm not lying, they're lying, then calling the other a b, butthole, goof, you name it. Often, using that phrase exactly. At one point one of them was cautioned by the judge for swearing and said frick, sorry. The judge decided they were both not credible. Former divorce lawyer, not so much insane, but unfortunately common, accusing former spouse of molesting the children and domestic violence to retain full custody, and get a restraining order to force spouse out of the marital home. This sets the new status quo for custody, which judges are reluctant to disrupt considerably down the road. Takes months if not years for accused spouse to prove his innocence, and CPS will often find evidence where none exists if accusing party is a good enough manipulator actor. Pretty horrendous long-term outcome for all parties. Kids are brainwashed against a strange parent when young. Later they often grow to resent the accusing parent for poisoning their relationship with a strange parent. Kids often grow up with multitude of mental health issues. Probably one of the worst things a person can do to their children, all to win against their former spouse. People who do this and are found out should be jailed. I don't care how long after the fact it is. This is just so absolutely fricked up. I work for a divorce attorney now, but the craziest thing came to my attention when I worked for the prosecuting attorney. This couple was breaking up and Mr. left the house. Mrs. went to work the next morning as usual. When she returned home in the evening, she found Mr. had been to the house and removed his clothing and belongings as she expected. What she didn't expect was that he had also gorilla glued her belongings together. He glued the TV remote to the table, the phone to its cradle, the couch pillows to the couch, and even glued the vacuum cleaner to the carpet. She called the police and reported this as property damage. The police went with her through the house documenting dozens of items glued to various things, but for days she was discovering random things and she would call to amend or update her report. My GD oven mitts were glued to the wall, or he glued the effing sheets together in the linen closet. I've seen people do and say really awful things to each other, but that was diabolical. Whoa, that's creative. Smart of her to call the police. Documenting this upfront helps. Not my story, but one I read here a couple of years ago. I really hope I don't butcher it as it's been a while, but here goes. There was a super wealthy guy that was a top exec at a Fortune 500 company who was getting a divorce, and it was rather nasty. This guy was pretty much set for life. He had a bunch of stock, houses, and assets in so many places. The ex-wife wanted everything she could possibly get. The husband came up with an idea that if she let him keep everything, he would give her half of his paycheck for the rest of his life. She quickly agreed because his checks were huge, and this also included any bonuses, which were in the millions. As soon as the paperwork was finalized, he quit his job and started to work part-time at a sporting goods store. I can't remember which one. This story was told by another employee. They're not the actual guy that got divorced. Anyway, he still had all of his assets, so he would drive to work in a super expensive car, and one day the employee asked how he could possibly afford that car. The guy said he was set for life and didn't even need to work at all, but every Friday when he got his paycheck it made everything so worth it, knowing his ex-wife would only be getting about $150 per check. I remember that one. I think when the ex-wife tried to sue for more money, he just said the emotional toll of the divorce was too great and he just couldn't handle the stress of his old high-paying job anymore. I'm in a different area of law, but my co-worker had a client in a messy divorce where the parties were required to split up some antique pots. When the husband delivered the wife's share of the pots to our office, he took a crap in each one of them. It was a whole big incident. I just saw this on a YouTube video. The husband gave the wife everything material, house, cars, etc. in the divorce except his Magic the Gathering collection. When he went to collect it, he found his wife had broken the seal on his MTG Alpha starter deck. This was worth about 20k USD at the time and currently for sale on various sites for around 50k. For context, as soon as you break the seal, the deck becomes worthless, and unless you get some of the insanely priced cards, like Black Lotus, you will lose a significant amount of money. So she literally got all the assets they accrued over the marriage and killed the only thing of value this guy got out of total spite. Magic the Gathering collection. I know of a guy who had these really rare playing card decks that he managed to win in a divorce settlement, and his wife did the same thing. He ended up suing and she had to pay over $250,000 because that would have been the insurance payout if they were stolen. I read one where in the settlement there was shared custody of a parrot. Neither were allowed to teach the parrot to swear at the other one. I hope the parrot is going through some counseling. How about a wholesome, insane one? Anal. But this was told to me by my mom regarding the divorce she got from my dad. They couldn't settle on an alimony amount. Mom and her lawyer came in with a number. Dad countered with a number. They couldn't agree, because my dad thought my mom should get twice the amount in alimony she was asking for, and my mom didn't want my dad to give her that much money for months. It took months for them to settle on a figure that appeased both of them. Even then, my mom puts aside the extra above what she wanted in case my dad ever has a financial emergency, and my dad puts aside the extra she didn't want in case my mom ever has a financial emergency. The funny thing is, they don't know the other is putting the money aside for the other. My mom told me about her emergency stash and my dad told my brother about his emergency stash. Bro and I discussed it while talking about what nut jobs our parents are. Their divorce was perfect. It wasn't. There were still some hurt feelings and resentment from all parties involved. However, my parents, for all their flaws, both accepted their own responsibilities for the falling apart. I think it helps that they still loved each other deeply. They just weren't in love anymore. They have been friends since my mom was 2 and my dad was 3. Started dating when mom was 12 and dad was 13. They separated at the ages of 49 and 50. It makes sense that they grew apart. I've had a few people ask why they divorced in the first place. My dad had had a girlfriend for at least 15 years, possibly longer. My mom knew, but they agreed to not divorce until my younger brother had graduated high school. My dad got remarried to his girlfriend. My mom has also since remarried. All four of them get along famously now. The separation and divorce happened about 10 years ago. I'm very lucky to have 4 parents who care about me and who absolutely adore my own little dudes. Not a lawyer, but my partner has a mate who was going through a messy divorce. He registered as a gambling addict and went to some Gambling Anonymous, or whatever it's called, and proceeded to go to the casino every day, taking wads of cash with him, pretending to gamble it all away, while he was secretly squirreling it all away. That way, when it came to the divorce and he was questioned where all his money went, he could prove that he lost it all through his gambling addiction and never had to pay her a penny. If your ex-spouse wants your pet, and they intend harm to it, and it's not chipped, give the dog away to a friend. They can chip the animal and there you go. They have verified ownership. Not a lawyer. I worked at Staples for 6 months in college. I only ever sold one chair mat because the cheapest one was crap and the nice one was $120-ish. One day a guy walks in who looks homeless. He looks distraught. I give him my normal doing alright today, sir, and he tells me that he needs a chair mat, so I walk him back to show him the options. I told him that no one had ever bought one because the $30 mat is flimsy and the nice mat is over $100. He looks deeply into my eyes and says, my wife left me today. She cheated on me and she's going to take everything. Give me the most expensive mat you have. If she wants it, I'll cut it down the middle so she can have her half. Freaking B. I didn't really know what to say, but I came back with, well, we do sell protection plans for $9.99. If anything happens to it, he interrupted with, frick it, add it on there. Every dollar spent is one she can't have. I hope he's alright. I probably caught him on the worst day of his life. Got props from the bosses for not only selling a chai mat but also for the protection plan. I'm half cringing at the boss's reaction and half wondering what would have happened if you'd shown the customer your entire store catalog. I see a lot of unsubstantiated accusations of child abuse and or molestation to deteriorate the relationship between dad and the kids. And we'll hire experts and therapists and there will be an investigation. We'll have depositions and a trial. And after a year has passed without dad being allowed to see his children and thousands of dollars have been spent, it will come out that nothing happened. This happens in my practice about once or twice a year. Very common. The moment a parent is caught doing that, they should be jailed and or banned from guardianship. Sick fricks. Have a friend who went through a nasty divorce and his ex was vengeful as heck, despite him having done nothing wrong like cheating, lying, etc. Basically, he got laid off from good job and the loss of status embarrassed her, especially as he took to being stay-at-home dad and their kids adored him. Never mind she had MBA and 6-figure job herself. She would buy expensive crap on credit cards to show high expenses, then return it for cash or store credits so that the refund didn't go back on card, so that she could try to get more support, to just get a job. He took one at Home Depot. He'd been an engineer at a tech company. Later on, he landed an IT consulting position that was part-time but paid about what he made at HD working full-time. She petitioned the court to try and force him to have a full-time job, basically wanting to force him to spend 30 more hours to earn same. The part of his custody granted him dinner one night week with the kids, i.e. 5-7 p.m. He asked for it to be school pickup to 7 p.m. instead, and she refused that even though from 3-5 they were at home with a nanny who had to be paid for that time while mom was at work. Worked at an airport. Big burly guy brings an ugly boss dog in a crate to the counter. He is clearly misty-eyed. Turns out wife got the dog in the divorce and he has to send it to her and she told him as soon as she gets it she is putting it down. He asks if he can have some time with the dog before the flight so they go out in the grass and they both roll around in the grass. Dog's tail just wagging away not knowing anything about his future. The guy puts him back in the crate, drops him off the counter, says thanks and then just walked out hair down and just looking crushed. That was 30 years ago and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I worked in family courts when first starting out. The most memorable case I saw was the woman took literally everything out of the house. She ripped out the carpets even. Not a divorce lawyer, but about 15 years ago I handled 2 insurance claims for a man in his 40s or 50s who was getting divorced from his wife, who was in her mid-20s. First she filed a claim on his auto policy. He was wealthy, but had to have a high-risk auto policy due to many speeding tickets. She was not on his policy, saying that he crashed into her car on purpose. The claim was denied because there is no coverage for intentional acts. A couple of weeks later she files a claim on his homeowner's policy, saying that he stole her engagement ring, which was specifically insured at a high amount, like $10K plus. Again, she is not the policyholder, and the ring wasn't stolen. He just had possession of it, so there was no claim to be made. I wonder whatever happened with that guy. Sounds like it's not his first rodeo. I knew a guy that got out of the military at 19 years so his ex wouldn't get half his pension. He would rather get nothing than give half the pension to his ex if he stayed in one more year. A friend's ex-wife and he settled their divorce with her getting the house, a hefty chunk of retirement, all the gifted jewelry and his Harley she had gifted him for his birthday. A few weeks later, a robbery occurred and the only thing that was stolen was the jewelry that he had gifted her, which was intended for their daughter. She tried to file an insurance claim on the jewelry but forgot to get appraisals and adders riders, so the max insurance paid was $1,500 for over $20,000 of jewelry. Suspicion is she staged it but is now stuck with stolen jewelry she can't legally sell, nor wear, nor give to the daughter without tipping the dad off to the scam. Divorce lawyer accusing their former spouse of forcing them into prostitution. Text messages revealed they were actually just swingers. She also admitted to lying in order to make him burn. I can't wait to leave my practice area. First, this is not the most evil thing I have seen so far in practice. It's just one of the things that sticks out in recent memory. Second, in my experience women don't have an unfair advantage or get away with things more than men. The reason this individual was not held in contempt was because judges have an incredible amount of discretion and they tend to exercise their discretion sparingly. Unless someone is making a fuss in the media or publicly lying in order to ruin someone's life, the court avoids exercising their discretion to punish individuals in a divorce context. The reason courts are hesitant to impose penalties or hold someone in contempt is because the majority of lying that happens, in my experience, comes from victims who shield their abusers. Lots of men, women, and children say things and then recant their testimony in order to stay in abusive relationships or save themselves and their families from threats of violence or retaliation. Victims need to feel safe to tell the truth. Having penalties gives the court a stick, and having discretion gives the court a carrot. Ultimately, we all want the truth, and holding someone in contempt or threatening to hold someone on contempt is one mechanism that helps us uncover the truth. Finally, women, men, judges, commissioners and lawyers are all human beings. I've met humans who act like monsters and I've met angels dressed as humans. My sincerest hope is that we treat others the way we would want to be treated and remember that we all make mistakes. Yes, I charge for my services and my duty is to serve my clients to the best of my ability. Some clients just want it all to end while others want to fight over the keychain they bought at Walmart 5 years ago. If that keychain means a lot to my client, I explain how much that keychain will actually cost them in the end and let them decide if it's worth it. I have met attorneys who drag out litigation to run up fees. However, any attorney worth their salt is consulting with their client and actively trying to bring about a speedy, fair resolution. That seems like a super illegal accusation. Not a divorce lawyer, but my grandma sucker her divorce lawyer before she served her husband the papers, got pregnant, and then convinced her husband it was his. He paid child support for 18 years and never had a clue. Pretty crappy. The lawyer had a family of his own. They have no idea my mom and my family exist. 18 years, and on her 18th birthday he found out it wasn't his. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.